I'm live. Okay, cool. All right, guys. So my name is Charlotte Young Bowens. I am the founder of Conscious Gear. I'm also the innovator of VestaPak, the world's first hydration vest designed by and for bigger bodies. And today I'm going to be doing a masterclass called Designing the Outdoors. Specifically today, I'm just going to be keeping it real about landing in REI. People always ask me, how did you get in REI? And I want them to know that it wasn't really like very linear. I think that the process of getting REI was a little convoluted and had a lot of touch points, and there was a lot of things that happened. But before we begin, I wanted to let you guys know that I was selected to be a BMO fellow, which is a prestigious honor. Hundreds and hundreds of people apply for these fellowships, and only a handful get them, and I happen to be one of the folks that got it. And as part of my fellowship, I get to offer what we call a base camp, which is an event that I share with the community, because as a BMO fellow, my job is not really my job, but what I'm doing as an entrepreneur is trying to say that I am making a positive social impact. And so I'm doing this mini masterclass to offer to my community a way in which I can have a positive social impact and not just sell vests. Okay, so let's see. All right, I am struggling with how to navigate this, but we are going to figure it out. Let's see. So the first thing I'm going to do is, let's see if we can do what I need to do. So I wanted to show you guys a video about BMO. Let me see if I can get to that space where I share with you the video. Give me just 1 second as I try to retrieve the video. Jesus. Okay. Let's see. Effects. Let's see what effects. Oh, here we go. Let's see. I want to add the video. Where is the video? Video. Okay. I don't know why I'm not finding the video. Uh-oh. Okay. I don't know why I'm not finding the video. Uh-oh. Let me send. It's really only allowing me to upload. Images and not videos. Ooh, I should have practiced this before I came on board here. Let me see if I can do it this way. No, this way. No, this way. Yes. Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you guys the video because I am not sure how to add it. But that's okay. We're just going to move along with the workshop. So today's workshop is called Keeping It Real About Landing in REI. And as you guys know, my name is Charlotte Young Bowens. I'm the founder of Conscious Gear, and I'm also the innovator of VestaPak, which is the world's first hydration pack designed by and for bigger bodies. And I would share my story with you, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it moving. All right, so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do what I call 10 talking points, which are really roadmaps to people getting on the shelf at REI. I'll share with you some strategy, the importance of relationship building and readiness, how to be ready for being with a major retailer and all the things that it takes, because it can be a little bit challenging, and I want to take, your hope and your hustle and turn it into action. All right, so the first thing we're going to start with is, if you want to get an REI's program, the first thing you want to do is fill out the green light application that's on REI's website. And I tell people, for me, it doesn't matter if you're ready or not ready. If you're interested in being REI, you feel like your product might be a good fit for REI, I would just recommend that you fill it in. Because if you're ready, things will go through and they'll reach out to you and have a conversation. And if you're not ready, they will decline your application and perhaps ask you to apply again. But at that point, when they say, if they decline, you have an opportunity to ask them why. And that's going to be some really pivotal and important information that you're going to need in order to move forward and understand how to in the next application cycle, be able to get your product into REI. The rally situation is free, it's online, and basically it's the first step to getting seen by a buyer. So it's a screening tool, so recognize that that's what it's going to be. What REI looks for is a clear product. They're looking for a clear story. They're looking for clear pricing and your readiness to be a vendor in a large major retail. So I always tell people at least start the app so you understand what the questions are, so you can prepare and be ready to input the information. And I need you to know that most companies, 99%, unless you're a major, big, huge brand, even the big, huge brands had to start with this application. So, and also, I think what the application will also do is let them know, oh, this person is serious about their business, and they're prepared and they're ready to take their business to the next level. So just go to, they always say don't bury the lead. So I thought what I would do with this session is, the first thing I'm gonna tell you guys to do is go to Greenlight application on REI's website, look at all the questions, submit when you feel like you got everything completed and completed well. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help you with any questions that you might have with it. I'm more than happy to review your application if you want me to, because you want to make sure that it has everything, right and ready. I'm going to say three things. Three things are going to probably get your application denied. Number one is that you're offering a product that they already sell at a high level, that they got a lot of competitors. Maybe the sales are strong, but they got so many competitors. They just feel like you're just going to be in a sea of products, so they may decline your application. I think a second reason why they will probably decline your application is because, and I'll talk about this later, is the importance of sustainability. They have a lot of rules and regulations around that. That is part and parcel, the heart of their brand. So if you're not bringing that sustainability kind of mindset and attributes to your product, they probably are not going to hold you. They're probably not going to, bring you into their store, because you're going to be counter to their brand messaging. I think the third reason why sometimes people get declined is because I think it's important for you to understand, maybe because you're priced too high or you're priced too low. And I'm going to say this little bit about that, and then you can do what you want to with the information, is that I think REI is somewhat of a luxury brand store. It's not super luxury, but then again, it's not a Target or a Walmart. You know what I mean? It's like in that upper middle category of products. So, if your stuff is too low, they may question whether or not their customers will want to buy your product. And they will also question the quality and the sustainability messaging in your product. And then if you're too high, of course, that could be an issue as well, because they do want to be able to offer their clientele who are willing to spend money, but they're not going to be, not going to be spending what we call Louis Vuitton kind of money on outdoor stuff. So just know that, and just know, like, if you do apply and you get declined, you can ask them why, and then you can take that information to improve upon your next application, as well as really think about if, REI is a really good place for you. That's a good time to find out. Okay. Number 2, I want you to do what we call in-store research. When you're doing in-store research, I really think it's important for people just to go into REI. And what you want to do, I did this for years. Every time I would go into a new town, every time I had access to a different store, I would go in there, right? And I would go straight to the hydration vest department, and I would look at what they had. I would try things on. I would look at the tags. I would see how things were positioned in the store, where it was positioned in the store. What is the customer journey when they come into the store as it relates to buying a hydration vest? I also did some things like talk to the salespeople, because I wanted to hear a little bit about, how they interact with customers around these products. What do they say? What are important features that they find that customers are looking for over and over again? And then I also wanted to understand, how is it, how do they, it's not necessarily that REI is trying to sell anything, but what is it that they potentially say that gets people to buy? And so I really, before you even get an REI, make sure you go into the store. If they do not sell your product or service, whatever the case may be, and they feel this need to finally break through and allow you to be in the store, but chances are that you're going to be hard pressed. So make sure what you're selling as a product is already in the store or something super similar to it. It doesn't have to be identical, but it has to be in the same lane, so that they can figure out where they're putting it and why it's going to appeal to their customers. Talking to sales floor people is super important because they're going to give you a lot of information that no one else will. I think that a lot of times we do a lot of what we call marketing research, and marketing research will tell you like who your customer is and where they shop, and they may tell you, oh, your customer shops at REI. That's one level of understanding your customer, but the other level of understanding your customer is talking to salespeople, because they can tell you exactly what your customers are saying. And I think for me that's really important, because then you can begin to talk to your customers in that language, because you know exactly what it is, because you got it from the salespeople who are dealing with these people each and every day. I would say definitely look at the shelf space that your product might be on. Will you want to invest in end caps, which is like a way for the store to feature your product that will cost money, but it's something to be thinking about, because you do want to get as many eyes as you possibly can on your product. And so that's something you're going to be thinking about. I would even say not only just visit REI, but visit all the other sporting goods stores, like Dick's Sporting Good, Big Five, Cabela's, Sierra, all of them, outfit, like outdoor stores, because those are great places too to get information about, your product, how customers are talking about your product, what kind of sales is on your product, stuff like that. And again, that's stuff that you can't get when you're like sitting behind a computer and or having intellectual conversations. I think you can do beta testing and be able to, get information from potential customers. But when you talk to the store people, you're actually getting the information, the in real life, day-to-day conversations that your customers are having when they go into these stores. And its prices, I'm telling you right now, it can make the difference between night and day. Now, some other tips I would say is take photos of the packaging, take photos of the placement, the signage, study it very thoroughly, and just try to envision, create a vision board. That's what I did. I took a picture of inside of a REI store, and then I put my vest. I photoshopped my vest into the image so I could see for myself, oh, this is where my product is going to go. This is how it's going to look. And also it just really was inspiring and motivational for me, to have that image available and ready. Okay, so just do in-store research, and do in-store research as many stores as you possibly can. I'm here to tell you, like, this right here could be a game changer. I can't tell you how much it can be a game changer, but it really can, because you're really getting the kind of information that you're going to need to be successful. All right, so let's move on to our next one. Okay, let's see. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be talking about is nail your product differentiation. Look, if your product doesn't stand out, no one's going to see it. That's why going into the store is pretty important, because you're going to see what's already being offered. And by seeing everything that's already being offered, you can really then say, oh, I really do have this unique value proposition. I have a differentiation. And so therefore, yes, my product is super different, way different than anything anybody else is doing. And so that'll be important, because if it's just another, thing, then people are going to be like, why should I buy this over someone else's? And then also, just be able to understand, like, why is your product meaningfully different? Not just in colors and materials, but I think right now, particularly for outdoorsy people, there's a couple of things that they look for. Again, sustainability. Is it made out of recycled materials, biodegradable materials? Has it been manufactured in a plant that treats its employees ethically and pays them a living wage? I mean, there are so many of these sustainability issues. What is the carbon footprint of your product? These are things that are really important in REI space. And so you're going to have to be able to kind of state that at some point in time so they understand that that's why you're different than other folks. But also it could be your proposition value really is about making something more convenient, something more comfortable, something more sturdy, higher quality for the price. I don't know what it is for you, but these are your differentiators, and you're going to have to really know them really well, and you're going to have to be able to somehow allow your product through, marketing and advertising, but also by the tags on it or the way that it looks to feature the fact that is different. Because if it looks like everybody else's, it's going to be hard for people to even believe or recognize that it's different from anybody else. Also, I would say this in terms of your differentiator. You want your product to have an unmet need for REI. You're helping REI solve a problem, offer a product to part of their clientele base, right, that they can't reach because no one else is making that. I can tell you right now, if you're making something, my hydration vest, it's not that REI doesn't have many hundreds of hydration vests, but my hydration vest was for larger bodies. None of the other brands were doing that. So of course they brought me in because I met a need for bigger bodies that come and shop in their store. They knew that was definitely something that was requested and needed. They weren't doing it, neither was anybody else. So therefore they could bring me in because I met an unmet problem, or, as we call it, the gap in the market. So if your product really is meeting a need that is not being met, you definitely can level up and have really more significant conversations with REI because nobody else is doing it. You're the only one that's doing it. But if that is not the case, then you need to let them know, based on market research, your sales experience and your product feedback, that somehow your product is different and is meeting a need that no one else is solving. So it's not to say that if they have, I can tell you right now, backpacks, people come, every time I go to REI, there's a new backpack maker, you know what I mean? Something about their brand is a little different, and so they get in. So, it's not impossible if you have a product that's similar to anything else in the store to get in, but just remember that you got to figure out how to make it different and how to be able to communicate that with customers. So when they come in, they're looking for your product and your product only. So one of the things I said is really kind of like, especially if you're going to start having conversations with buyers, or even if you're in the store talking to salespeople, you got to practice saying your differentiation in one sentence. What makes you different? And be able to communicate that over and over again in a short, succinct, and clear way. And then that way people go, okay, I get it. And then they understand why you're here, why you want to be in the store, and why your product deserves and needs to be there. So, nail your product differentiation. And it can't just be simple stuff. My thing is this. Let me back up a little bit. Let's say your product differentiation is around materials maybe, or design, but really it's not really that much different than all the other stuff. I would say in that case, you need to ask yourself if this is REI is the right store for you. You know what I mean? And don't be afraid to go to other places like Dick's Sporting Goods and Cabela's and Big Five and Dunham's and all the other sporting goods stores, because maybe you're a better fit for these other places. So again, by going into the store, by understanding your differentiator, you can really begin to understand, if REI is a place for you. Because I think for a lot of people, they think, I want to get REI. And as I will tell you guys a little later, be careful what you ask for. All right, the next thing we're doing is, our next subject matter is reverse engineering. What I mean by this is this. Your dream is to get into REI, right? and you want to sell in all REI stores, and you want to sell nationally, I say to you, yes, you can do that. However, I want you to reverse engineer that process. And so, for example, that's what I did. So I said to myself, honestly, when I said to myself, it was probably 21, maybe 22. I said, oh, I want to be an REI store. I did my market research, and it said, oh, it's probably take about 5 years before you could even get an REI store, which is interesting because it only took me about 2.5 years to get an REI. But besides the point, I reversed engineer. So I said to myself, what do I want? I want to be in all the REI stores across the country. I think at the time it was about 400 stores, and I wanted to be online. So I said, if I wanted to be in 400 stores and online, how much product am I going to need to have available in order to do that? So I did the math, right? And I said, okay, that was nowhere near that. So I said to myself, okay, let's take a step back from that. I said, okay, what if I'm in 50% of REI stores and online? Okay, that's a couple hundred stores. How much product am I going to need? How long is it going to take for me to get that manufactured? How much is it going to cost? And I said to myself, woo, that's a lot too. And then I doubled back again. What if maybe I was in 25% of REI stores and online? What would that look like? And even at that level, that was a lot, because that would have been like maybe 100 stores or a little less. That's a lot of stores to be in. And then also to make sure that you have multiple products for everything that you sell, and in multiple sizes. So I was like, wow, that's a lot. I put some timelines on that stuff because I was like, ooh, that stuff that's gonna definitely take me 3 to 5 years to make happen. But then I said to myself, what would be the next step before that? And that would be, maybe I would say I was in 25 stores. Instead of 25%, I was in 25 stores and online. That felt more manageable, but still felt like something I needed to work towards. So I gave myself a goal of, okay, let's just say in 18 months to 2 years, you're in 25 stores and online. What's the steps before that? And the steps before that was to be in 12 stores across the country and online, which is where I'm at right now. What is that going to require of me? What I'm going to have to do. And then, but before that was another step. And that beginning step was I started local. I went to my local REI store, had some conversations. I was like, look, I'm a local entrepreneur. I have this business. I sell this. And the beautiful thing, the number one thing I want to say to people out there is, like, if you want to be an REI, go to your local REI store. Tell them that you are a business owner, because all the REI stores have capacity to support locally owned businesses. And so it's a great testing ground, because if you put your stuff in a local store and it doesn't sell, then you might need to realize maybe that's not the place for it. Or if it does really well, then that's an indication, especially when I first talked about filling out your green light application. You can say, oh, I'm selling my stuff at the local store. We've been selling through at this rate. We've had, good customer satisfaction, X, Y, and DZ. That's going to compel buyers to be like, oh, okay, we'll take you nationally. We'll let you go nationally. We'll let you get in, the 10 to 12 stores across the country, or whatever the case may be. And so really starting locally. And I want to say this to people. Look, when I say local, I mean not just REI. You should go to all the sporting goods stores locally, even the small mom and pop shops. Go in, tell them who you are, talk to them. I know plenty of entrepreneurs right now who sell in REI, but their sell-through is slow. However, they do excellent in small mom and pop outdoor shops across the country. They make way more money from that than they do from the big retailer. And it makes sense, because if you're dealing with kind of MOQs and you're dealing with manufacturing, sometimes dealing on a local level, community level, it can be more steady, right? You can make more money because your margins are probably better. So just know, like, there's options within this kind of ideal. When you're thinking about reverse engineering will allow you to see the spaces that you can be in as an entrepreneur, and allow you to grow in a way that feels good for you and feels viable for your company, right? Sustainable. One of the things I say here is, before national shelves, ask, can you crush it at your local store? I mean, because if you can't crush it at your local store, what makes you think you can do it at the national level? Again, I said REI does support community-based brands. Use this to your advantage. Because when you do that, you can build a local buzz, get some data and get some testimonials. And then in that process too, oh yeah, that's really good. This is really good. When you're reverse engineering and you're trying to understand how to scale to a larger level, you're going to start learning about POs, right? Purchase orders, fulfillments, returns, and replenishments on a smaller scale, right? How that works. When do you get paid? How soon do you have to have your stuff to the store? What kind of tagging system or packaging does it have to be in? You get to learn all that stuff at a smaller scale, because guess what happens when you get into REI? Then you're going to have to do that on a grander scale. And it is no joke. And I think sometimes jumping from the small scale to the store scale is pretty intimidating. It was intimidating for me. And honestly, I'm glad I had my local store experience, because it informed me about what I needed to do once I went national. And then, as I said before, talk to your local REI manager. Go in the store, talk to the salespeople. Find somebody you vibe with, connect with, because they're the ones that are going to be your champion, and they're going to advocate for you, and they're going to get you in front of the manager much easier. You can definitely walk in and ask to speak to the manager, and that's fine. But I always say, go ahead and chat with some folks, and then kind of get to know people, and then move up in terms of the people that you talk to, so you can get yourself in REI. All right, our next thing I wanted to talk about, the thing that nobody wants to talk about, is know your numbers. Know your margins, know your minimum order quantities, know the math, and know the pricing. Let me say this lovingly. If your numbers don't math, if your math ain't mathing, you're not ready for retail. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If your math ain't mathing, you don't want to do retail, because I'm going to tell you something right now. When you start going to the wholesale, large scale, retail relationships, there are so many places where things can happen. And when those things happen, they affect your bottom line. They affect how quick or how slow your product gets on the shelves. They impact when that PO is issued. They impact when the PO is paid. So, honestly, you got to know your numbers, and you got to be really detail oriented around that, because it can hem you up. I'm a very detailed person. I dot my I's and I cross my T's. Before I send out any product, I look at it. I look it over personally at 3 different times, because I want to make sure everything is done correctly. I do not want to ever send anything to REI that's not of high value, high quality. I don't want to send anything to REI wrong. It's not tagged correctly. I don't want to send stuff to REI and it's the sizing is wrong. Like, none of that. I want everything to be 100% perfect, so there's no issues. And because a lot of times when you're dealing with these big retailers, they'll get your full order, but if there's one little mistake, they stop dealing with it until the whole thing is corrected. Sometimes that can cost you money, but more than anything, it costs you time. And also can cost you your relationship. So you got to know your numbers. You got to know your math. And in terms of knowing your math, you got to understand what buyers need, right? When I said before, one of the things that you can probably be declined for as it relates to getting into REI is pricing. But you need to understand your pricing, right? You need to understand how much does it cost for you to buy. How much does your product cost from manufacturing to REI? That journey, whatever that is, however much it costs, from tariffs to taxes to shipping to production to forwarding to whatever, know all those costs per product, right? And then what are you selling it wholesale to REI? And like right now, with all the tariff business, it starts to cost you as a as a company, higher cost to produce this stuff. So not only, so it dips into your profit. So if it's costing you more and then you sell into REI at a certain price, that means you're getting even less margins, less profit than you were before. And so really staying on top of that, understanding that, figuring out, how to manage, how to buffer your business from geopolitical, standoffs as it relates to tariffs, which is something no one thought they were going to have to do ever. But obviously we're in that day and time. One of the things that I suggest, not only to know your numbers, but to diversify your manufacturing. Like, make sure you work with local cut and sews, make sure you work with nearshoring, whether it's Canada or Mexico, and then maybe you have your overseas manufacturer. Because I think if you buffer in those 3 types of relationships, if anything should happen, then you don't have to worry about, not being able to submit product on POs that are being issued. And so you don't ever get backed up or behind on those POs, because I know this one person, they had a PO for the summer and then their order got messed up, so the PO was pulled back, right? This is what you have to understand about retailers. If they say, look, you're going to give me this product for summer, they're expecting you to give it to them for the summer. If something happens where you're not able to give it to them for the summer, then it's not like when you get the product, they're going to all of a sudden give you a PO again and you can give it to them then. The summer is a summer for them. If you don't get it to them in summer, they don't want it. And then also what people got to understand with retailers is that they're always working months, years out. So while they issued a PO for you for summer 2025, if you don't give them what they need, they're not going to be thinking, the next time they would even remotely think about possibly issuing you another PO is for next summer. So not only did you not get your stuff in the summer because something happened, but then you got to wait all the way to the next summer. And that's not, like when you're trying to make money, you can't have those big gaps, because they're detrimental to your business and they will really drive you out of business, so to speak. So I just say really understand all about your production, your cost, when you can get things early, when you can maybe stock up on product, have a little bit extra inventory just in case you run into issues. Because the bottom line is that if you can't get your product to people to a retailer when they ask you to, you're gonna have to wait until the next time. Sometimes it could take a year or two. So just know that. And the other thing I want to say is, when I'm thinking about, talk about knowing your numbers, is know your margins, right? So like, for instance, let's just take a product, a backpack, some kind of backpack. Let's say you sell your backpack for $100. The reality situation is you're going to sell it to REI for probably about $50 or more. Chances are you're going to sell it for about $50. Okay, you sell it to them for $50. Now, how much did you make it for? Hopefully you made it for less than $25, because otherwise you're not going to get a lot of profit on that, right? Now, you get more profit doing direct to consumer sales, but when you get to your wholesale, then you make less of a profit on it. And a lot of people wonder, why are those margins so high? And can't believe that I have to give up that much to these retailers. And I'm here to tell you, you give up that much to these retailers because they're doing a whole bunch of things that you can't possibly do. Number one, they're putting your product in front of hundreds and thousands of customers. They're putting it on the shelf inside of a store where they have to pay rent, lighting, staffing, electricity, all the things, right, that you don't have to do. They're featuring your product. You know what I mean? They're giving you a platform. They're basically sharing their platform with you, so that their customers can see what you make, and that all that stuff that they do for you as a brand costs them money. You know what I mean? It's not free to run these stores. It's not free to get these customers into these stores. It's not free to put your stuff on shelves. And so that's really what you're paying for. And so when people struggle with that, I'm like, don't struggle with it. It's just the name of the game. It's just how it works. You do not probably have the capacity to be at 400 stores across the country, or 400, let's just say 400 corners across the country, selling your product to thousands across the country, selling your product to thousands of people. You probably don't have that capacity. How much money would that cost you to do that anyways? It would cost you a lot. So your ability to kind of sell your product at a certain amount, affording you something that you could never do for yourself, especially not as a small business person, and especially not in the beginning. So people think, oh my God, they're just being greedy. They're not being greedy. They're actually just trying to pay themselves for trying to help you out. And so otherwise it's just not sustainable, right? You know what I mean? If they just each, I mean, they wouldn't never have enough money to be able to, you know, make sure the store stays clean, make sure the lights are on, make sure the air conditioning, you know, make sure their staff is paid a living wage. So yeah, know your numbers, your margins, your minimum order quantity, your pricing. Do the math. If the math ain't mathing, baby, please pause and figure out the math first before you start engaging these wholesale relationships, because quite honestly, they can do you in. I know, and I'll talk about this a little later about, you know, everybody wants to be in retail. I don't know. I mean, it just depends. If you're ready for it, cool. But if you're not, forget about it. All right. So this is what I want to do. Okay. Next, I want to do a little reminder. As you guys know, I am a BMO fellow. As part of my BMO fellowship, I am to do what they call base camps, which are events that I go into the community and I share and I try to have a positive social impact. I say that my brand has a social positive impact, and I fundamentally believe that it does. And so today yesterday, today, and tomorrow I'm doing a series of these mini masterclasses talking about different aspects of entrepreneurship and the outdoor industry. And I do that as my base camp because I want others who are interested in this industry to be able to have the tools and strategies and the resources and information and knowledge that they need to be successful. And in exchange for being here, I hope that I'm giving away free gifts to people who will, if you use the QR code or the link, fill out a little short survey from BMO, let them know that people are being impacted by my base camp event, so to speak. I would appreciate it if you do that. So yeah, and that's enough. I'm not going to talk about that more. So if you get a chance, you can use the QR code on the screen, fill out the survey, let them know if you liked what I did, if you didn't like what I did, or whatever the case may be. It's all good because it's completely anonymous. I'll never know anyways, but it'd be great for me to know if, you know, if there was any good out of this. Okay. Our next topic is be supply chain realistic. It's not just can I make it, it's can I make it when can I make this product even if boats are stuck in the Pacific Ocean, right? Supply chain just really is talking about who is supplying you with your product, which is your manufacturer, which I just talked about earlier, which I said, you want to have 3 types of manufacturers. Something local, like a cut and sew. You want to have something near shore, Canada or Mexico, and then you want a foreign overseas. Because suppliers regularly increase prices. And they increase prices not just because of tariffs from the United States, although right now a lot of manufacturers are taking advantage of the fact that this tariff business is going on, and they are really trying to capitalize on it. So I mean, stuff that I made in 2023, late 2023, is doubled in price now. Like, it's just not even nowhere near what it was before. And so when I say be supply chain realistic, is not only do you have to buffer your company from geopolitical changes, but you need to do it financially and you need to do it manufacturing too. You got to ask yourself, am I ready for an international tariff war? Am I ready for environmental changes, like an environmental event that causes delays, like hurricanes, whatever. Is your business buffered from, your manufacturer getting backed up due to like COVID? You know what I mean? Are you positioned to handle if there becomes a shortage in something because of something else that's happening in the other part of the world that's impacting, what it is you make and what you need, to bring your product to life? All these things are like, we're just living in a world right now as business owners that makes products specifically. Well, I would say services too, because it can impact services as well. But I know I can speak to the products that, man, you almost have to kind of be prepared for a little bit of any and everything. And it's hard, right? Because who's a mind reader? I mean, last time I checked, I don't know. But in how one little slip up, one little change can really impact your capacity to make products and subsequently wholesale those products and subsequently make money. You have got to be realistic about this stuff, and you need to be able to have plan B, C, and D. So for example, as I always mention, have domestic options for manufacturing. Again, Canada, Mexico, or in the United States. Yes, it's going to cost you a little money. It's going to cut into your bottom line probably significantly, but are there other ways you can reduce costs so that you can continue to still at least make a fair amount of margin? And then like another thing that sometimes I think about is like, can I use alternative materials, not the most expensive webbing and, zippers and buckles and fabric trimmings, is there a way for me to find alternative materials that are just as high quality, but maybe I can get it at a reduced price? So making those plans to get around unexpected events is going to be important. That our supply chain is very volatile, is very fragile, it's ever changing, and right now it's completely unpredictable. So I see people that want to get an REI. I'm like, why? Why want to get an REI when there's like so much going on? But if that's what you want to do, I definitely encourage you to do it. But understand that you're going to have to really be thinking of strategically about how you're going to contend with unexpected factors that are going to impact your business, over and over again. Okay, so I'm going to stop talking about that because that's kind of depressing if you ask me. So, all right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is retail. Oh, this is what I call retail partnerships are like relationships. Okay. Your partnership with a retailer, it's not a fling, y'all. It is a full-blown relationship. It is important for you to be communicating with any and everybody that you can. The way I do my relationships is that I try to understand everybody's role and what they do. And a lot of times when you're dealing with retailers, you're going to be dealing with a lot of people coming at you for different things as it relates to your relationship to the retailer. Some, want to do like your images on the website. Some people are going to be dealing with you, your PR. Some are going to deal with you with where your product is placed. Some are going to be dealing with you with your sustainability statement. And some are going to deal with you, dealing with online versus in-store. And some, depending on the store, sometimes they have different peoples for different regions. So you're just dealing with people after people after people. And being able to sustain those relationships is going to be pretty important. You're going to always want to be in communication with them, reply to them as quickly as possible. But more importantly, I say, this is how I do things. It's like, there's a lot of people and they do a lot of different things. But I always try to find the people that I vibe with. Or those people that communicate to me that, look, Charlotte, if you ever need anything, please reach out to me. I keep them in my back pocket, right? I always make sure that, if I run into issues or I'm having problems, those are the folks that I go to because they're usually good about trying to help me troubleshoot and figure things out. And so I'm so appreciative of them. And also just because their vibe and energy was like, look, I appreciate what you're doing. I like the work that you're doing, and I want to help you out as best as I can. And so I'm not good at, asking for help, but when people offer it, I'll take it. And so, your partnership, I tell people all the time, like, people always ask me, well, who is it that you deal with at REI? It depends on what you're talking about. What do you mean? I deal with a lot of different people. And then I also deal with store managers. And then there's the store people who handle events. And then there's a store people that handles product. And sometimes these people handle such different things, nothing overlaps. So it's like, if I want something specific done, I have to make sure I get to the right specific person. So building those relationships is really important. Mutual trust, regular communication, be reliable, and then one of the things that I've learned, and I really want to recommend this to people when you're having retail relationships, is make sure that you're always talking in a language that is aligned with the brand, right? Always be in the space of aligning what you have with the retail brand. REI at the end of the day is a brand, and they're committed to their brand 100% priority. I'm just a vendor, you know what I mean? And just remembering that, because I think a lot of times we think somehow these people owe us or anything. Like, just because they accept you doesn't mean anything. It just means that they want to have a working relationship with you. But at the end of the day, they're always going to stand behind their brand messaging. They're never going to like sway from that. So if you do something that is counter, you're probably going to be looking at a little challenge in your relationship with them. So make sure you're always communicating in brand alignment. Like for us, the vest, we're going to be doing even more recycled materials in it. We really are. We're looking at working with a recycling microplastics company to make some of the trimmings and the buckles. So I'm super excited about that. Like, I'll be able to maybe one day be able to say that our vest is 100% made out of recycled materials, and that would be definitely aligned with REI's goals. And it just speaks to the fact that that's why we need to be connected. Also show them that you're completely professional, organized, and responsive. And your job at the end of the day, when it comes to this partnership, is to make the buyer's relationship easier. So one of the things that happened for me is that we originally had a plan about where my vest would go. And then I said, look, guys, let's make sure we put these vests in places where there are bigger bodies, where you sell the most plus size products, because then the vest has a higher chance of reaching that audience. And so that was making their jobs easier, right? Instead of them trying to have to figure out and guess and just go whimsical about it, we could be really more strategic. And I think doing that has really helped with my sales through rates. And your job is like, always be ready to present new products to buyers and why they might want to bring it into their fore. Always be responsive to buyers' questions about your product. They're your friend, they're your advocate on the inside. And so it's so important to keep that relationship solid. Communicate with them on a regular basis and respond to them in a timely fashion, because they're making a decision about you having that retail relationship or not. So make sure you stay in contact with them, and make sure you treat them with respect. Okay, next we're going to move on to sustainability. I think I've talked a lot about sustainability, so I don't know how much more I really need to talk about it. But let me say this about REI. Sustainability is not a buzzword. It is a filter, meaning that they filter out all the people that don't care about sustainability. You know what I mean? Certain brands will never get into REI. Why? Because they don't care nothing about sustainability. Some brands get into REI because originally they started off with sustainability and then they stopped doing it. And guess what? Those products are not in the store anymore. I have a whole list of these products. I know what they are. That's not important, but I'm just telling you that sustainability is really important. Again, as I was saying, how are you aligned with the REI brand? And if you're not aligned with that, try some other places. I always say there's more places to go. You can go to Dick's and Cabela's and all that kind of stuff. Maybe, as it relates to your product, the way you can make it and being cost efficient, or even maybe around the quality of it, maybe you just can't be sustainable. I get it. I understand. But understand that if you want to get an REI, you need to really be able to toot your horn and celebrate and announce how you are aligned sustainably with REI's goals and mission. Okay. Don't greenwash. REI can spot that faster than a raccoon's. This joke is not funny. REI can spot that pretty fast. Make sure that you can articulate what you actually do that's sustainable. Be specific and be able to communicate that on a regular basis. And when you're thinking about sustainability, like, look, maybe your product isn't completely sustainable. Let's just say that. Maybe you only got one aspect of it that's sustainable. There are other ways in which you can be sustainable. Maybe it's around some of the materials that you're using. It could be packaging. Maybe it's around shipping. maybe it's around, I just listed these things on this list because I wanted to mention them. Circularity, like the way your brand is positioned, it has a circularity component to it. And so therefore it is feeding into the system that feeds into the next system, to the next system, and circles back around. And so, cause like for instance, maybe your product doesn't have a lot of recycled materials in it. However, you have, let's say, again, let's go back to the backpack that I started with earlier. Maybe it's not made out of a lot of recycled materials, but you offer customers opportunity to return their backpack to you once they're finished, and you will do something to recycle it, or you offer to do free repairs to their to your product. Again, that's like a sustainability kind of statement. So there's different ways in which you can do this, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be in the product or the materials, but it can be in how you're doing it. Also, sustainability too is about who are you hiring? Are you about DEI? REI is definitely doubling down on DEI. And so, they look at how many BIPOC folk do you have in leadership? How many BIPOC folk do you have working at your company? Not only that, but, one of the things that I've been challenging them on is like, yeah, you want BIPOC leadership and people to work at these companies, but what about these companies being more responsive to bigger bodies? How come they're not making more products that can fit folks that are larger? That's not definitely their mission, but I definitely want to challenge them on that, and maybe that's something they will lean into in the future. Who knows? You never know. What you need to know is this: sustainability is your values in action. And what you want to do when you're having your relationship with REI is to let them show. Okay? Let them show. All right, so this next thing I wanted to talk about is, let's see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. Be careful what you ask for. I alluded to this ever so slightly, maybe not so slightly, gently before. Everybody wants to be in retail stores, and I'm here to tell y'all, be careful what you ask for. Having retail relationships is hard work. It is not easy business, y'all. I wish it was. It is not. There are definitely benefits to it, but it's kind of like, how do I explain this? Oh, so let's say you're working class and you make just enough money to pay your bills, right? And you got to the point where, everything's cool, the bills are all paid. You got a little bit of maybe disposable income, but not a whole lot. And then all of a sudden you get a promotion and maybe you're paid the kind of money that ups the ante, right? So now you can maybe live in a better place, maybe drive a better car. But what's happening when you kind of go up a grade, or, as it relates to your pay, you're introducing newer and bigger issues to deal with. And that's the same thing with REI. First, you're a mom and pop shop and you do vending events and you sell here and there, Going to retail is like going to another level. And at that level comes a whole host of new challenges that you got to contend with on a daily basis. And particularly if you're a small brand, it can wipe you out. But I think there's a way to deal with it so that it doesn't wipe you out. But also you just got to understand. And then also too, I think the one thing that I see a lot of entrepreneurs fail at, really, I'm going to be honest with you, and people may hate me for this, but look, I'm good about my money, but a lot of people are not. And so one of the things that happened for me when I got ready to go into my retail relationship with REI is that I started divvying up all the money. I had the money that was like to run the business, that was direct to consumer, right? I had another account just for REI. You know what I mean? When they pay me, or if I have to pay for things as it relates to my product being in their store, that money was sitting right there. And then there was other money. Then I had another pot of money that dealt with all the things that come with having a retail relationship. Like, I pay extra for insurance. I pay extra, like, if I send something to REI and there's a problem with it, they ship it back to me, not on their dime, my dime. You know what I mean? Let's say they have an opportunity for me to be able to do some marketing and stuff like that. I got to have money sitting around so I can pay them so that, my product can be boosted and seen by more folks than normal, right? And I think a lot of times people struggle with just one account, but when you start getting to this level of doing wholesale relationships, you're going to want to have different pots of money for different things, and you're going to want to have the opportunity for money to sit sometimes for a hot minute until something happens, because you just don't want to be in a situation where something goes down and you have no money. So it just changes the dynamics, you know what I mean? You're not just getting by, by the skin of your teeth. No, you have to plan. You have to be almost proactive, because you can no longer be reactive, because the moment you're reactive in your business, when you start dealing with wholesale, you'll go bankrupt. Yeah, you'll be out of business. Forget it. Done. Because you just don't have the buffer. You don't have the education and knowledge and the tools set up to help you through these moments when things can change at the drop of a dime. If the last year, since COVID, if we haven't learned that nothing is reliable or predictable, we are really just ignoring the truth. And so you got to really prepare yourselves and dig deep and get better about your money. You can't just be spending your money in and everywhere. You got to divvy that money up, make sure money's available, sitting around. Like I have a money back guarantee. So when people buy my vest, I can't spend that money. I got to wait. I usually wait 6 months. Then I'm like, okay, now we can spend that money. Because at any point in time, if they come back and say, oh, Charlotte, give me my money back, I got to be able to give it to her. So this is the thing. The other notes I wrote here were wholesale is hard. You do lose margin. I can sell my vest, right, through my website, and I make coins on coins on coins. But when I sell it to retail, I don't make as many coins. You're going to need systems. And I think, this is what I say, be careful when you export. When you start a retail relationship, I don't care if it's Walmart, Target, Costco, any of these retailers. In order to have a relationship with a major retailer, you have to have this thing called EDI, electronic digital interface. It is a program. It costs thousands and thousands of dollars, and you have to pay monthly fees for it in order to communicate financial invoicing information to a retailer. It's encrypted in such a way so that no one can understand. So no one can tap into the information that's being exchanged between you and this major retail company. It's a protective device. It's almost like cybersecurity at a heightened level. And that could take companies out because they're like, oh, I didn't know how to deal with an EDI. Yes, baby, you have to have an EDI. So, that's another, be careful what you ask for. Like, right, here's another expense. My insurance went up because I was in REI. I had to make sure that I had funds, and I had to make sure I always have money available in shipping, because when I send my stuff and something happens, they could easily send it back and I still have to foot that bill. You know what I mean? So just it just changes. When you upgrade comes new issues, new challenges. Another note I put here is that you'll be pushed on quality. You'll be pushed on delivery. When REI issues their PO to me, I usually have about 10 days, and then there's a 3-day window when it has to be shipped out. And if it's not shipped out in that 3-day window, I let them know, but I have to wait till the next window opens. And now that has never happened to me because I don't let that happen to me. But I know people who have, and sometimes that window can be months and months and months later, which means that if you don't, okay, what's going on here? Okay, you don't, okay, what's going on here? Okay, what I was to say is that, because let's say you don't send it at the time that they tell you to send it, then you got to wait for them to issue another date for you. And sometimes that could take, a couple days, maybe a couple weeks, could take a couple months. And so that's just longer you waiting on fulfilling your wholesale order and then getting your money. So it's no joke. You really got to be prepared for things. And then also you'll be pushed on volume. Like maybe in the beginning you only sent X amount, but now they're asking you to 5X that amount. Are you ready? Can you handle it? Can you get it to them at the time that they need it? So you're just leveling up your game, and when you level up, you have more and different issues. And that's the next point. I said your whole business has to level up. If your systems can't scale, your dream can quickly become a nightmare. So build slowly, but smartly, with intention. And if you have extra capital to be able to build fast, by all means do it. But I just think build smartly more than anything. Because even with more cash, you can burn through that cash and still be because even with more cash, you can burn through that cash and still be in the same situation that that you don't want to be in. Okay, this last part, it says, here it goes. My last section is called Get Real About REI Customers and Start Networking. Look, you're not selling to REI. You're selling your product to their customers. And I'm going to tell you something right now. I've been challenged on this. While I feel like my product is a product that REI sells, I have had to learn that, honestly, the bigger body folk who are looking for this product are not going to, some of them are going to REI, but not a lot of them. And the reason why is because a lot of them had gone to REI and they didn't have anything. So now they just don't think to go back. And so part of my struggle is, how do I reinvigorate them? How do I reignite and invite them back into REI? And this has been really a challenge for me, because I've even talked to customers about this, and they're like, Charlotte, I don't mind the fact that you sell your stuff in REI. And they say, look, I really do want to go in REI and buy your products. However, they feel like, okay, yes, REI has this one product, but what about all the other things that I need, And so why should I just only go to their store for one thing when I really need a lot of other things? And they make a good point, which is something that I'm really going to be trying to advocate for. It's kind of like, I don't know, let's see. I don't know. It's like a store that sells only to a certain group of people, right? And then all of a sudden they invite a vendor in that's selling a product to another group of people. If you're not known for serving the other group of people, then they're not going to come, or they don't know they can come because you haven't historically or traditionally been able to offer them anything. And so there has to be, I'm trying to educate people, but I'm realizing now that part of this has to be REI's issue too. But also it has really forced me to think about, where else should my product be so that I can reach these customers, So as I wrote here in my notes, like, who shops there? Who do they value? What stories do they buy into? And so part of that too is just networking with buyers from all the different companies and having the conversation. I really feel like there needs to be a bigger conversation around bigger bodies in the outdoor industry, because I do think it's hit or miss. Even when I go in all the other stores, it's like sometimes they have something, sometimes they don't. Some things they have in larger sizes, and some things they don't. And I just think, like, how does somebody, you're always having to cobble up by going to several different stores to get the things that you need. And I just don't think that's fair, and that should be the case. And so, also when I think about, your customer and the REI customer, is network with store managers from different stores as well as REI stores. Also network with merchandisers. And more importantly, I think one of the things, network with other founders. Like, ask them what their experience is, whether or not they're selling specifically what you're selling or not. So just get an idea of, because a lot of times the people that you least expect will have some of the best ideas, or they will know somebody, or they will shed some information on you that will really bring to light what it is you need to be doing next. So, get real about the REI customer. Is that your customer? And if it is, then how do you talk to them? And how do you become known for your product, and for them knowing that your product will be at this particular store? Because your next opportunity is probably one conversation away. All right, family. Woo! Those are my 10 talking points about keeping it real about landing in REI. I feel like I didn't say half the things I really wanted to say, but I thought I'd start with these first 10. Listen, I'm not here to discourage you. I'm here to help you show up, but I want you to be ready. Retail can elevate your brand, but it will test the bounds of your business. It really will. And I just want you to know that you can do it. And you know, they always say, do it scared, honey. Like me, just do it scared. You know, I encourage you to apply to REI's green light, or at least start looking at the application, understanding the questions in there. Get prepared intentionally, because you're going to need to be speaking to these intentions on a regular basis. That's what's going to attract you to your customers. It's definitely going to attract you to retailers. And if you want help, I'm going to be running these master classes, and what I'm going to do is take some of these topics and I'm going to go deeper so that people can understand all these different things. Because I think talking about 10 things at once is a lot, but this is just part of my BMO fellowship. You know, this is my base camp, and the way I wanted to share important and hopefully helpful information with potential outdoor founders so they too can be successful in their business. I think we're in an ever-changing landscape and society, and so as much help as we possibly can get is important, and I want to be able to share that with you. So feel free to drop me a note if this helped, and if you want to talk to me, if you want to share with me your application, if you have questions about how to prep your brand, please do. And if you get a free moment, use this QR code and fill it out, the survey, so BMO can know that maybe I reached one soul, maybe a half a, no, I'm kidding, one soul. And then let's see, my upcoming plan, which I don't think I have a slide for, is tomorrow morning. Oh, maybe I do here. Oh yeah, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be doing the last session of my masterclass. It's called Beyond the Shelf. Tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock on Instagram. So just go to Conscious Gear on Instagram. And I'm going to be talking about Beyond the Shelf, building a brand that goes the distance. Because I think right now we need to be really thinking strategically about how do we help our companies remain sustainable for the long haul. How to handle these dips and how to handle these kind of bumps in the road that come as a result of unexpected situations in our environment, in our world, or in our lives. And so I'm super excited to talk about that. So feel free to join me on Instagram tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Pacific time, which is first thing in the morning. Hope to get that done. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being a part of the Conscious Gear family. And I hope this was a little helpful to you. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. For those of you who can listen later, just know that I love you. Thank you for all that you do. And I'll see you in my next video. Take good care of yourselves, people. Peace out.